Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar, Make Your Meetings Matter, Capturing Attention and Inspiring Action. I'm Liz Connors. I'll be your presenter today. I'm Director of Business Development with Lumi. I've been with Lumi for 6 years, working with corporate clients and association groups on building more engaging programs through technology solutions. Enough about me, let's move on to the content we're all here for. I did want to remind you to download the Me Too app so you can get the most of the webinar. We'll be doing some polling and some discussion boards where you can send in your comments, questions, and feedback. You can visit your app store and search Me Too, or you can go to this link here on the screen in your mobile browser. The meeting ID is 188-003-698. So we're going to look at the elements of attention, including what captures attention and why, and how to take advantage of it. We'll discuss how to engage attendees and further inspire participation. And then we'll look at 7 tactics for increasing participation at meetings. So let's go ahead and get started with some engagement. I'd love to know where all you're calling in from today. Go ahead and just tap your selection on the screen, and I'll be able to see those as they're coming in. I'll just give you about 4 more seconds here. Okay, so really spread about the country and even some international audience on board. So I hope no matter where you are, you can hear me well. Please use the discussion board through Me Too to send in any questions or comments that you might have. Let's run one more question. I'd love to know what type of meetings you run and participate in. Choose options 1 through 7. You can really choose as many as you like here, and please hit send when you're done. I'll go ahead and give you about 10 more seconds, folks. Are you doing status update meetings, potentially information sharing, problem solving, innovation? Maybe it's all. If you do select other, please go ahead and message that in once I reopen the message board. Okay, a really across the board variety here. Well, that's great. The content that we're going to cover today is really universal, so it'll be applicable for meetings small or large, no matter what the content or who your attendees are. So I think we can all agree that engagement is a really important issue for both people running and attending meetings. A 2014 Harris poll said that 46% of the respondents would prefer to do almost anything else instead of sitting in a status meeting. 17 even said they would rather watch paint dry, and a very strange 8% said they'd opt for a root canal. Now, I think they're crazy. I would never opt for a root canal, but this study certainly supports the need for improvement in meetings. So what can we do to make sure that our attendees are paying attention and that they're really authentically engaged? Perhaps we should start by looking for signs of disengagement. Could that potentially look like this? I don't know if you guys can do that, but I can certainly do that. Now, I've never done it in a meeting, but I have potentially from time to time nodded off, yawned, potentially multitasked under the guise of taking notes, stared off into space, and sometimes I've lost my attention span, not even on purpose. So let's take a poll. I want you to respond and let me know which of these people you feel is engaged. You can choose up to 5, and please hit send when you're done. I'll just give you a few more seconds to respond, so go ahead and get those answers in, and please remember to hit send. Great. So I can really see that your answers are across the board, and that's correct. The answers are all or none or some, because it's really hard to tell just by reading body language. There are some better ways to be sure your attendees are engaged, and it can start by focusing on better understanding attention, how we gain it, and also how we keep it. So what are we wired to pay attention to? The human brain is already wired for several things, really. You won't have to necessarily teach your meeting attendees anything new. We'll really just need to leverage what the brain is already wired to pay attention to. If we can't gain the audience's attention, we can't engage them in our message. So the first thing that humans are inherently wired to pay attention to is movement. This was really an ingrained survival skill to notice any new threats in our environment. Now, this was when we lived in a more lethal environment than we do now, but instinctively we still pay attention to movement and change as well. Have you noticed when watching the news, there are more graphics these days, more animations, digital news tickers, virtual objects on weather maps? Nowadays, there's digital billboards and flashing animations just about everywhere. The goal is really to gain attention and to weed through everything else. In the context of a meeting, movement can really refer to change within projects, discussing progress, changes in the company, or even physically moving during your meetings. So another thing we're already ingrained to pay attention to is chase. You've heard the phrase, the thrill of the chase. Well, everyone loves to move towards something. It's very powerful. Humans, as an example, love sport. We love the pursuit towards a goal, and we will later discuss why having a defined goal for your meeting is also so important. Now, in the context of meetings, this could really, again, pertain to a goal, having a very specific outcome for your meeting, or discussing or brainstorming competitive strategies. Again, we're really focusing the chase as it pertains to the pursuit of a goal. So challenge. Humans love stories, which also are always about some sort of major challenge or conflict. There's actually a very funny Irish proverb I like. If you want an audience, start a fight. Now, I'm certainly not encouraging you all out there to start a fight club at the office, but there are ways that conflict does not require two people to debate each other or physically fight. You can use conflict as an enticing way to challenge ideas or have beneficial conflict that can be useful in your meetings, like figuring out how to surpass a competitor, discussing how to overcome an obstacle, perhaps it's sales targets or lack of budget, again, brainstorming on a problem, or even asking someone to play devil's advocate. So anything new, people are inherently inspired by anything new. We're constantly analyzing it for potential threats and even opportunity. So if you want to engage your attendees, it's sometimes best to think about not what everyone knows and not discuss what everyone knows, but to actively seek out what everyone doesn't know. Of course, in the context of your meeting, new could be anything. New information that the group hadn't previously known. We all love secrets, correct? New projects, new ideas, new opportunities, even new threats. But bringing something new to the table can always inspire and engage. So the next inherent thing that we're wired to pay attention to are questions. When we hear a question to which we want the answer, our ears perk up and we're likely to pay attention. So looking at this photo here, you might remember back in grade school, the teacher asked a question and everyone's arms instantly arose because they wanted to be the person to come up with the best answer and they wanted to help get there. This is why many TV shows end on cliffhangers. People love to think about the possibilities. Questions can bring about imagination and great conversations in your meeting. One thing that I love that really enhances the power and talks about the power of questions is David Sandler's world-famous approach to networking, sales, and business. He talks about using questions in your conversations, in your negotiations, and all your conversations with your clients to really get them engaged, to get to the heart of a matter, and to make them feel special. In the context of a meeting, again, this could be asking attendees to contribute ideas, perhaps on-the-job experience, In problem-solving meetings, this could be talking about the ultimate solution, conceptualizing how the problem will be solved, and what steps it will take to get there. So stories, this is a favorite one for me. As I alluded to earlier, humans are wired to identify with stories. They allow us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and really learn in context without having to experience the event. They're especially captivating because they involve multiple touch points for the mind, and they again entice the imagination. So in the context of your meetings, this could be stories from companies and other industries, on-the-job stories including lesson learned, customer stories, or motivating stories that get people thinking or ready to spring into action. So I actually want to get you guys further engaged on the discussion board here. I'd love it if you could message in any example of when you've used any of these tactics to capture attention. Movement, it could be chase, challenge, anything new, questions or stories. I'll go ahead and give you a few seconds to submit your ideas, and I can see them as they're coming through. So just as a reminder, if you're not on the app yet, you can search Me Too in the App Store, or you can also get it through a mobile link. But searching the App Store is probably going to be the fastest way to get you on board here. The meeting ID will be on every slide as we move forward. So questions are crucial, as I can see here on the message board. Always ask to get feedback right away. Absolutely. Asking people about their own experiences, yes, absolutely. Getting people to talk and engage with you is very important. Discussing competitive strategy at meetings as it relates to chase, certainly. Stories to open a general annual meeting, absolutely. That's a really good way to start meetings off on a good foot. So you can go ahead and keep sending in your ideas as you like here. But I'll go ahead and move on. I do want to point out that attention does have limits, so while we do want to focus on gathering it in the first place, we want to focus on keeping it. Several studies support that the human attention span is actually shrinking, and doing something to re-engage attendees, like a polling question, vocal fluctuation, telling a story, or movement, is very important, and doing that every so often in your meetings is a valuable tool for keeping people engaged. So is attention enough? Attention is certainly important, as we've discussed, but the answer is really it's not enough. I could certainly do a magic trick for you or light myself on fire, if we were face-to-face, of course, and that would capture attention, but it might not be the type of attention that I'm looking for. What I'm looking for my meetings is meaningful attention, which we call over here at LUMI engagement. So how do you engage attendees? I really like this piece from Let's Stop Meeting Like This. It says, a meeting has meaning when you know that what you are doing is important, that the outcome will make a difference to you, to others, to the organization as a whole. Now I love this quote because it makes it sound so simple. We don't need fireworks or magic tricks. We simply need to understand what people want and how to deliver it to them. Additionally, we'll most likely want to go a step beyond attention and a step beyond engagement. So ultimately, the most productive meetings will turn engaged attendees, like the folks you can see in this picture, into active participants. We want them to make meaningful contributions, take steps towards a goal. Most productive meetings, as well, are the ones that produce the most insight, the best ideas, and really lead to better business decisions. In every meeting, we want to capture attention, engage attendees, and transform that energy into participation and comprehension. We spend a lot of time and energy planning our meetings and getting people to come together. Let's try and get them to communicate something, a belief, their feedback, their opinions, instead of just watching a presenter. This will lead to more engaged attendees that feel like they're a part of something powerful. So knowing that stories are good for attention and really good for demonstrating this concept, let's look at a story. So this photo here was actually taken at a company's strategy summit for marketing. They came together from around the world, from the UK, Australia, the US, and South Africa. And for many of them, it was our first time meeting face-to-face. It was really important as a result to gain a unanimous decision on the strategic direction of the marketing team. Leadership had arranged for anonymous contributions using this app, Me Too. This really eased concerns about participation, and it really made it easier to say exactly what they all thought, despite regional sensitivities or potentially sitting next to one's boss. Consensus and understanding were often easy to achieve, as this was a small group, but there were occasional surprises and conflict. For example, when asked if team members agreed with the strategic direction that they initially discussed, all team members but 2 agreed. Had there not been anonymous polling, perhaps leadership may have never known, and it was 2 of the company's most important representatives from the largest regions that would have left discouraged and unheard, and then ideally not in line with the core that had been decided. Conversely, new staff had come up with previously unimagined ideas for the team and proposed them through the app. They felt confident in expressing their thoughts as equals with the others because it was anonymous. This really allowed the company to capitalize on the fresh perspectives, which is why they had hired these folks. So the anonymous polling was valuable in so many ways, and messaging as well, but the polling in particular allowed attendees to gauge their opinions against others, and meeting hosts could track progress and really reach the organic consensus they were looking for on the initiatives they were discussing. So this story was actually Lumi. We do try hard to practice what we preach. So now that you've heard a story, we know how to capture attention, let's walk through the 7 ways to take our engaged attendees and turn them into the most active participants. So the first tactic I want to discuss is providing the why before the what. This is really important because when attendees understand the why, they're able to pay better attention and have an easier time understanding what you have to say. John Medina, the author of Brain Rules, makes a great point in his book that explains the importance of providing the why before the what. It says, providing the core concept first is like graciously giving a thirsty person a tall glass of water as the brain processes meaning before detail. And starting with the general idea first has shown to provide a 40% improvement in understanding. And as John conceptualizes here, we really do process meaning first. So before people will listen to what you have to say, they really need to know why it's important. So if you could see a 40% improvement in understanding and comprehension at your meetings, you would probably do it, right? So are you providing the why before the what? Some people will even ask some why questions of themselves before they send a meeting invite. So this could be, why is having this meeting useful to my meeting goal? Why am I inviting certain people to this meeting or certain speakers? Why should they care to attend and participate? So next is providing a destination for your meeting. Part of the why is having a goal or destination for the meeting, and oftentimes the goal may not be expressed as much as it should be. Just as you'd find it distracting to be a passenger in a car without knowing the destination, meeting attendees need to know the shared goal or goals of the meeting. They like to have takeaways. An agenda is really important because it anchors the meeting. In some cases, I find a bullet agenda acts like a map for me. It can help me segment topics in my mind and really focus on single tasking instead of constant and distracted multitasking. As an example, in my job, I do a lot of contract negotiation. It's important that I go into these meetings with a very clear picture of the goal, what I want to accomplish from the negotiation. If I don't, I'm a prime target for overcompromise and really losing the most in the negotiation. So again, as a reminder, this really applies to all your meetings, no matter the size. The destination should be clear. If you have a theme, make sure that you really use that theme and play it up for your attendees. If you're doing invites, you can bring in those themes, talk about what they'll learn from the education, what they'll derive from networking at the event, etc. So this next one's a really important one. We want to think about the participant not just as an attendee, but as a participant. Many meetings are set up to require silence and stillness from their participants, and we want to move away from that because those are the first two steps in falling asleep. So to engage people, it helps to start thinking about people as people, participants with thoughts and wisdom that we can gather to have better meetings. So looking at this example in the picture, there's a couple of people I want you to look at. Now you can ignore the circle for a second and look at the person steering the raft. So she's the guide, and everyone else in the raft is really meant to help steer the boat and provide power for the journey. Now the guy up front with a circle, which you can look at now, is there, and he's present, potentially holding on for life. But note he isn't paddling or participating like the others. So he's in a position to fall out, or in a metaphor for meetings, to really feel disconnected or left out and potentially not contribute going further. So meetings and groups in general become smarter and more effective when more people get the opportunity to participate. So instead of just thinking about how you can capture attention, think about how you can make it easier for people to participate. So I'd like to run a Me Too messaging question. If you could go ahead and use the Me Too discussion board, make sure that you've tapped the discussion icon to join the conversation. And please go ahead and just send in your ideas for how you can increase participation in your meetings, some tools that you've used. And while you're working on that, I'll just give you a little bit of time here. I'd like to talk about a few important points to keep in mind. First is meeting size is not excuse. Any size meeting, you should really be thinking about how to engage your attendees, especially nowadays as everyone is allowed to have a voice through blogs and social media. Attendees are going to expect more and more engagement and more ability to share their voice at your meetings. You can certainly use a tool like Me Too, audience response systems, tweet walls, event apps and gamification, etc. But make it easy for people to participate. Keep in mind that not everyone has the same communication style and preferences. Public speaking still remains a #1 phobia for many. So some people might need some alternative options. So find ways like applications like Me Too here, question boxes for collection, running advanced surveys, building in question and answer, building in small group opportunities, or ways for multiple participants to discuss and contribute. You can structure the room differently in squares or circles, even small triangles, so people can see each other and feel more comfortable. You can also ask for it. So if you want more participation, one great thing to do is to ask people for their opinions and thoughts. So I'm looking at the board here. I can see some great options. The first one I'm seeing is speed rounds of rock, paper, scissors, or heads and tails tournaments, including all participants so they get active and stay engaged. I've actually always thought that some events do their closing parties wrong and that those should be at the beginning of the event so that everyone can bond and feel closer and more comfortable. But not everyone agrees with me on that due to the hangovers that could result. So I see we own an IMO communicator system with microphones. Running surveys is effective. Absolutely. You can, again, like we're doing today, you can kind of keep the attendees engaged throughout the whole event and know how everything's going in a real-time scenario. Assign a few people to disagree with the premise. Absolutely. Devil's advocate, as you'll see, kind of streams through our whole presentation. Icebreakers, small groups, audience polling. Great. These are all great examples. And we'll do more of that, so feel free to keep messaging in your great ideas. So the next tactic we're going to discuss is finding out what they don't know. So Confucius says, true wisdom is knowing what you don't know. I don't know if you guys have experienced this as much in your career as I have, but I do find that a lot of times groups have a tendency to focus on and discuss information that everyone knows. Now, this is good for egos, certainly. It can lead to a certain level of comfort, but in the end, it really leads to less informed decisions. Trying to discover new or hidden information can change everyone's and really lead to a better, more practice objective and ideas. As a leader of a meeting, as a result, one of your goals should really be to seek out that information that isn't commonly known by everyone. Not only does this make the meeting more interesting and engaging, smarter, and probably produce a better outcome. You can do this actively by seeking out information, asking people if there's information that potentially hasn't been covered or shared, looking for holes in the ideas. You can even call on people for their opinions, especially if they're experts. They should be sharing, and that's probably why you invited them to the meeting. So next, as mentioned earlier, and someone commented on the discussion board, playing devil's advocate. Now you can assign the role of devil's advocate. Many of you have probably experienced there's one person that likes to play it whether you ask them or not. So certainly assigning the role can change that up a little bit and kind of change the practice that your group's into. As we learned earlier, people are naturally drawn to conflict, so challenging an idea captures attention and also gets people to use their imagination. I have a friend who's an author, and he calls it the idea brain. And he says if you don't practice, you lose your ideas. So constantly practicing using your idea brain is very effective. The devil's advocate role can also be assigned to the group as a whole. This would avoid falling into groupthink, which happens when people converge on the first idea that's said or even a bad idea just to get the meeting over. Now it's important to note, again, you can assign this to the group and you can rotate the assignments as well. So if you want to have different people play devil's advocate at different times during the meeting or at alternating meetings. In the end, this ultimately leads to better, more practice and developed ideas. So number 6 will sound practically crazy, ending the meeting early as a concept. So I'll explain. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time allotted to it. So as you've all likely experienced, a 2-hour meeting typically goes for 2 hours, even though you really, really, really don't want it to. So this doesn't have to be the case. Folks can think about how they can make their meetings shorter or potentially making the meetings end when the objective has been accomplished. So again, we're not saying you should end the meeting before you've accomplished your goal, but if you accomplish it in 20 minutes out of a 40-minute meeting, consider ending the meeting early and giving those folks the further expectation that the purpose of the meeting is to accomplish the objective and not to fill up their time. This is probably the most common reason that people dislike meetings, is that they feel that it fills up their time and they don't necessarily see all the objectives or all of the value. So we really want people to be excited for their next meeting experience. We want to focus on problem solving. The time thing adds urgency and really interest. Another option is to shorten the meeting time. We can experiment with this. Often, and I work with think tanks and ad agencies, and they both do this. They do short meetings for idea driving and longer discussion and problem solving meetings for fleshing those ideas out. So next we're moving on to deliver on deliverables. This is really important. If you don't follow through on your plans from previous meetings, it's a missed business opportunity, but also potentially will lose morale and contribution and engagement for your group. People are more likely to achieve when they have meeting notes. You can potentially even assign deliverables on the spot. Responsibility taken in front of others is more likely to be followed up on. You can cover what's happened since the last meeting in the first 30 seconds of your meeting. This will provide credibility. People like to know what they do matters. So show them that it does. Practice delivering on your deliverables. So I can see that we're running 20 seconds over here. So we're actually going to skip through the next slide. If you'd like to go ahead and send in your ideas for how you can improve meetings and what you've learned today, I'd love to see them. But we're going to go ahead and review and reflect on what we've quickly gone through today. First being the elements of attention, being movement, chase, challenge, questions, stories, and anything new, and using those to capture and engage attention. Then moving that attention to engagement and ideally active participation, thinking about making our meetings places where people can participate easily and often. And also we want to look at finding out what you don't know. So instead of focusing on groupthink, settling on the first idea, really trying to find out what you don't know and expand the group as a whole. And then having a goal and delivering on it to make sure that your attendees continue to be engaged and contribute. So as part of practicing what we preach, we thank you all for joining, and we want to offer everyone here free use of the Me Too app so that you can start creating more engaging meetings right away. You can use it for free for up to 100 people for 30 days and wow your bosses, colleagues, etc. All you'll need to do is visit metoo.com to sign up for that trial. As you've experienced today, it's easy to use for webinars, but it also translates well into face-to-face meetings, conferences large or small. Enjoy the free trial. I'd also love for you to send in any remaining questions that you have. You can do that now and stay on if you'd like, or through the next 24 hours we'll have that open and be responding as well. You can email me here or call me as well. And then you can tweet us at Lumi Insight or at MeTooApp. I certainly thank you all for joining today. I look forward to your questions and comments, and I look forward to having you on the next webinar. Have a great day.